Everybody, how's it going? Nate Dog Trainer coming at you. Tonight we got an exciting new episode on our podcast. This is episode number 2, so bear with us. We got our friend Diana Kastner here. She was in the first podcast with Scott. They're the co-founders of this amazing new group I found called Affective Dog Behavior, or ADB. So I've been talking with them a lot. Like, I really love having them on the podcast. We always have a really great conversation. We always walk away learning something about both each other as people and dogs, and something to look forward to talking about the next time we get together, because we always kind of go into new topics and really dive deep. So I really like having these deep conversations about dogs and dog training and just how to be better dog owners and better friends for each other, you know, even people, other dogs, you name it. So Diana, I mean, I've known her for a little bit, but just a little background. She's originally from Germany. She's a lifelong dog lover. She's worked with a couple different rescue, helping to rehabilitate dogs with some challenging behaviors and emotional baggage, as we like to call it, in Tennessee. She's got 4 rescue dogs of her own. Lucy was in the first video a little bit. She also has a few others. Gracie, we were talking about a little bit, and her golden German Shepherd mix. I want to talk about them a little bit because rescue dogs are kind of my bread and butter. I like, helping dogs that need help. So first and foremost, Diana, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here. It's always
right.
fun talking to you.
Yeah, it's always a good time.
Yep.
And Scott's not here, so we promised we wouldn't talk too much about him, but he's a big part of what we're all trying to do here. And the way I always try to look at it is, he's the dog guy. He's the beard and long hair, and he's in there with the dogs and the wolves, and he's had so much experience with dogs that whatever he says, I listen. I don't like to buy into a lot of things from people that like to sell you stuff that, like, oh yeah, I've been doing this for 10, 20 years. That doesn't mean a lot to some people, because it's not what you do, it's how you do it.
Yeah.
And, I look at the way he interacts with the dogs, the connection he has with them, the way they respect each other, and the way they communicate. Like, I don't know if Scott actually hears what they're saying as words. I think the more I do this, the more I can actually hear what they're saying or what they're trying to say, for the most part. Whereas when I was first a dog trainer, that was not so much. Like, you can hear the big things they're saying, like when they're barking or jumping or biting, or the very overt behaviors. But the more I've learned and the more I listen to what Scott and watch what he's doing, it's all the little things that most people totally miss.
Yeah.
Including owners. I mean, right now, my biggest thing is your dog needs you. Your dog is trying to get your attention because it needs help. And once you can establish that and hear your dog when they're asking for help, that's your starting point. Everything else tends to happen, in a more natural fashion, because that's their primary need. They need to know you're there when they need you. And that's, a starting point. So, effective dog behavior, that is the starting point. We are here for you, and we are going to help you. And in the long term is to help them help themselves as much as possible. I mean, even us, we need help from other people sometimes, but we like to do, as much as we can and be independent. Yeah. So I've been talking. I'm going to let you talk. So let's start off with, what is ADB? Coming from you. Like, where did it come from, and how did it get to be where it is?
Well, first I'd talk about what is ADB. Affective Dog Behavior is a program. So with Affective Dog Behavior, we actually collect the latest science, the latest research that comes from affective neuroscience, social neuroscience, and we collect all that information. And because a lot of those researches are not done on dogs, we try to see how it applies to dogs. Because the fun thing is that actually the canine brain and the human brain are not that different. So we can literally take this information and kind of translate it into dog. And that's what we are doing with affective dog behavior. And you have mentioned Scott. He's actually the brilliant brain behind it, because he has been working with canine emotions and this emotions based approach for many, many years before we even started thinking about affective dog behavior. And so it was about 5.5 years ago when I have found one of his videos online, and I thought, oh my gosh, where in the world did this guy come from? You know, and I knew exactly that this is what I was missing. That's the thing that I wanted to accomplish with my dogs. That kind of relationship, that kind of knowledge about, you know, he makes everything look like magic, but it's not magic. It's a skill. It's a skill and it's knowledge. And it's not based on protocol or techniques. It's just him understanding how dogs feel and how dogs think and how to use that in his communication with them. And so he has been mentoring me for the last 5.5 years. And so about 2.5 years ago, we decided to package this because other people needed to hear about this and other people needed to learn this as well. This is not a skill that you want to keep to yourself, you know, because he's literally helping people and dogs, but he was doing it on a smaller level. And that's not something, when you have a gift like that, you need to bring that to the masses. And that's where we started packaging it and turning it into affective dog behavior, with affective being referring to emotions, and the dog, of course, is the dog, where everything comes together, and behavior being part of handling dogs that we already know. So it's, you know, having the new science of canine emotions and the older knowledge that we already share with everybody else, and bring that together for the better understanding of the dog.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, back many, many years ago, they split those two apart. There was the behavior and the emotion, and they focused more on the behavior.
Yes.
And that's your, you know, your operant conditioning, your classical conditioning, your clickers, your treats, your shot collars, your punishments, you know. And I always say this is the next level. You know, that's good, but this is great.
I'm hoping so.
And you know, the same thing when I first heard Scott, it was, you know, it's like he was breathing a fresh air into what was becoming a very stagnant argument over dog training. You know, I think when you guys first reached out to me, I was literally like trying to debate like whether touching a dog was a reinforcer to the dog, and if it was a primary reinforcer or a secondary reinforcer. And you know, it's you start getting in these circles where you're agreeing, but you're not agreeing. You both want to say you're right, but that you don't want to agree that you're wrong or the other person's right. So we tend to stick to our guns. And as me, I like to just look outside the box. Like everything is into a nice little box, and I like to open the box and unpack it and pick through it. And we look for what was coined yellow umbrellas. I don't know if you've heard that phrase. It's instead of saying, well, I don't like this thing about what this person or this theory or technique, so I'm going to throw it all out. Versus picking out what is good and what we like. And I think when I was reading through your information, it said you started out as a Cesar Millan fan.
I sure did.
Yes. Well, you know, me too. Why? Because he was the only one that was available and out there to actually see, oh my God, he's working with these dogs that I would be shitting my pants to work with. Like they're trying to eat him. They're trying to bite him actively.
Yeah.
And he's like, whatever, don't even worry about it. So I'm like, not that I want to do that, but the one takeaway, you know, that I got from that was you got to keep your shit together. You need to be there for yourself and the dog, and not reacting to the dog and projecting or modeling calm, in control behavior. Which for me, that's it. If you can't keep yourself together and deal with what's happening, how do you expect your dog to deal with it?
Yes.
When they're looking to you to help them and be a role model? So even right now, talking about it, like, what do? I'm taking a deep breath, because it's stressful just talking about it. Like, and dealing with people, half the time when I meet a new client, I'm like, I don't know how you made it this far, because I would have like checked out because this is crazy. So, and that's part of it, dealing with that and helping to heal that part and move on is, a big part of what we do. And dog training is, it's a lot about the dog, but it's also about the owner, because they're the one that has to help the dog and do these things with the dog. And it's not about teaching them to sit and lay down. If anything, it's not teaching them to sit and lay down.
Well, and the other thing is too, because you're talking about the sit and the lay down, we tend to just go by observable behaviors. We tend to just we become experts in body language, okay?
Right.
But we forget that there's an internal process that actually takes place a little bit before we even see the body language. So by the time when we see the body language, the internal process has already advanced. It has already moved on to something else. And so if we only look at observable behaviors, we only see a very small part of the story. The bigger part of the story takes place inside of the brain. And that's the part that we need to understand.
So I guess one of the big questions that, I myself as a professional trainer and people that might be interested in ADB is, how does ADB help your typical trainer or someone that already works with dogs? I know like daycares, dog walkers, pet sitters, rescue fosters. I mean, this stuff is useful to anyone that works with dogs or has a dog or even likes dogs.
Well, there are things that are happening in the brain. So for one thing, affective dog behavior, instead of us having to, okay, let me use an example, how some trainers say, you need to let a puppy cry it out. If they start crying for you, you just let them cry it out. Other trainers say, no, it's not good. Other trainers again say that you need to start using a lot of treats. You need to start counter conditioning. And so looking at the brain and at the perspective of, from the brain part, that research tells you exactly what you need to do. Because one thing can harm your dog and can cause trauma and then results in separation anxiety. The other one is going to increase the dog's confidence. How do we know that? Because of the neurochemicals that are being released in the brain. And once we understand the basics of those neurochemicals, what they do, then we learn how to ask questions. And we actually get to be more confident in our answers to our clients and how we explain things to the clients. And so understanding the brain, the basic functions of the brain and the basic neurochemistry in the brain helps us understand where those observable behaviors come from, which also helps us explain it to a client. So that a lot of times you see clients that hop from trainer to trainer and they hop from gadgets, they buy all kinds of gadgets because the dog industry is driven by selling things and selling videos and selling books. And so sometimes I meet clients that have the latest books, the latest CDs, they watch all kinds of TV shows, they have all kinds of gadgets, and none of it is really necessary if you understand the brain. And so that's what helps us help the client, and that's what helps ADB help the dog trainer. Because without understanding the brain, you don't really understand the dog. How
Right. I mean, the biggest thing I know is there's very predictable patterns that come out when you're in certain emotional states.
Yeah.
And if you understand what's going on in the brain and the neurochemistry that's driving that,
Yeah.
then that turns into the behavior. But that's also where the learning happens too.
Yeah.
So I like to say we have a small window between learning and doing that we are teaching.
Yeah.
Because
and
they can't.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I mean, the biggest thing that I take away is when your dog is super excited or nervous, they can't learn anything. If they do, it's going to be fear-based learning, and that's not what we're usually going for.
However, exactly, that was the point. That's not usually what we're going for. The dog always learns. The brain always learns. But is it the kind of learning that we are aiming for as trainers? If you're focusing on obedience training, okay, then your dog needs to be in a certain frame of mind for that particular type of learning.
Yep.
If you are trying to help your dog be just confident and help them figure out the world around them, then that's always going to happen, no matter what. And coming back to the observable behaviors and where affective dog behavior can benefit trainers, is the more we understand the brain, the more we are actually also looking at older research that has been done. And we see where we are hanging on to certain research that's been like done 50, 55 years ago, and we're still using those labels in the wrong context. And I'm going to get to one that I do want to mention. Learned helplessness, for example, is one of them. Okay. And
yeah, it's a big buzzword, because that's what everyone's afraid of, that the dogs learn helplessness and they are shutting down, and
that they're learning that they don't have any options. But that is not how it works. So the newer research actually shows why learned helplessness is not learned, and the dog is not helpless. Learned helplessness. So we, with affective dog behavior, we start calling that a state of passivity. So the dog is passive, or the animal is passive. And actually what happens in the brain is that the brain goes into a passive state, whether the dog can escape or the animal has a way to escape or not. If there is prolonged aversive stimuli, the dog will go, or the brain will go into a passive state, whether there is an escape route or not. That passive state is always activated. And learning helps the animal to figure out that you can get away from it. So learning doesn't happen in the way that the dog learns that there is no way out. The dog learns that there is a way out. So that passive state is innate. That passive state is a default state. And the animal has to learn that the animal can escape, not the other way around. And why is that important to understand? Because for one thing, when we talk about our training methods are based on science, then we need to make sure that we have the correct science, for one thing. We do not need to misrepresent something. Now, we didn't do that purposely. It just so happened that we did not continue researching the newer studies and the newer science. And that's what affective dog behavior does. We always dig into it. We always research what's happening now in the science community, so that we are not getting stuck with old research. We have to have the newest research available, so that we can truly understand what we are doing, what we shouldn't be doing, and how we can help our dogs.
And that's our biggest job as, pet parents, is how do we best help our dogs?
Exactly.
Either in the short term or the long term. I mean, there's a lot of quick fixes and things that will, make your dog be better behaved or act better.
Yes.
But are they happier and are they invested in that? You can make a dog do something they don't want all day long, and they might do it and resent you for it. Or you can teach them and help them, do what they like, and that falls in line with what you're doing. I mean, my dog, I like to let him do whatever he wants, as long as, there's a certain level, of trust and communication there. And,
but you can teach a dog to sit, and they might enjoy it because they enjoy getting those treats.
Right.
That still does not take care of the underlying emotion. You cannot train emotions away. You can only learn to understand what's happening inside of the brain on the emotional level, because dogs will always be more emotional than cognitive. Adult humans will always be more cognitive than emotional.
Yep.
So we think.
And that's the thing. I mean, I try to read the dog's emotional state, and there's a lot that goes into that, but there's also not a lot that goes into it. You can tell when a dog's happy. You can tell when a dog's antisocial. They want to be left alone. You can tell when they're scared, when they're anxious. They wear their emotions on their sleeve for the most part until we kind of train it out of them.
Yes. but a lot of trainers do that, and a lot of trainers pay attention to their dog's emotions, but that's where it stops. So if they have a fearful dog, the only way they're using that information about that emotion is we need to change the emotional response.
Right. Okay. So give them a treat. Yeah.
Yes. Or we don't need to be training while the dog is in a fearful state because they can't learn. But that's as far as it goes. But there's so much more that we can do understanding those emotions. We can literally utilize what the dog gives us emotionally to build better connections, to build, to utilize the neurochemicals that are released during different emotional states. And we can better the dog's lives, and we can better our relationship. So it doesn't have to stop by the dog is fearful or the dog is aggressive. It doesn't stop there.
No, my newest thing is do you need help? I literally ask the dog if they need help.
Why not?
And a lot of times they're like, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
When I walk into the daycare, I mean, I can pick out the dogs that they need to talk. They've got something they got to get off their chest. And it's usually because this other dog's being a jerk and, but, when you come in, it's a perfect example. Like when I used to walk in the daycare, like, they're like, well, just ignore the dogs and walk by them and, don't give them any attention until they get over you. Like the first thing I do is hi. I touch each of one of them on the, on the top of the head. And then literally 9 out of 10 of them will walk away. And then there's that last one that's like, I need to talk to you. And then we go over in the corner and we talk, and I do my thing. And they, usually I can tell what dog that they're having an issue with, or that they're just having a rough day. And, then they're just like, they look at you and like, oh, thank you. And they give you that look, and that I love you look. And that, that's where I think the oxytocin's starting to flow. But, I don't have a little measure on me, but, the look I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So that being said, I mean, being there for dogs, the hardest dogs to be there for are the ones with a lot of baggage, like rescue dogs. So let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, I know how we doing on time here.
No idea.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, if you want to talk a little bit about your rescue dogs and how ADB kind of plays a role in rehabilitation of your own or similar type dogs. I mean, I've been there. I've definitely got the soft skills. There's really not a lot of formal training that goes on with those dogs in the beginning.
Well, yes, rescue is, I'm in it to help dogs. For one thing, first I want to mention why this is important to me and why I love the ADB route, because ADB will definitely improve human-dog relationship. There is no way around it. You build that bond, and that bond will last. And so I'm kind of selfish in when I teach clients or I coach clients, I want to build that relationship, because when you have that special relationship with your canine, you will not give up on your dog. Your owner surrenders will go down. The number of surrenders will go down, because when you have that bond with the dog, there is nothing that can break that. Because the neurochemicals that are released in the dog that will tie the dog to you are also released in yourself. So that bond goes both ways. So, I am literally manipulating my clients into sticking with their dogs. And so that's my big goal. I want to reduce the owner surrenders. And how do I work with my dogs? The 4 that I have, they come from different backgrounds. 2 of them are about the same age. 3 of them are seniors. My German Shepherd Golden Retriever mix was aggressive. She's the one that actually got me into following Cesar Milan. It made so much more sense to handle a dog that is aggressive in my inexperienced state back then, to handle a dog in the way that he did, than handing a dog treats when they are aggressive. It didn't make sense to me. And so I had 2 options. The trainers in my area did not want to touch working with her, because they said that a dog like that, you have to be euthanized. Right. And so I turned towards TV personalities, and there were 2 options. There was Cesar Milan, and then there was another lady. And it just didn't make any sense, so I followed Cesar Milan. And he did help me manage Lilu's outbursts, but they still happened at least once a month, that she would turn against one of the other dogs. And, managing was all I learned to do. Managing, and I could tell that she wasn't happy, that Lilu wasn't happy. Every time she attacked one of my other dogs, she looked more scared than aggressive, but she was the instigator, and she was the instigator a lot. And right. And then Scott came along, and the video came along, and our life started changing like immediately. And Lilu is the kind of dog, she has chronic anxiety. I don't know what happened to her in her previous life, but I know that dealing with her on Caesar's terms did not help. And I wish I would have known back then what I know today.
Yeah. I kudos to that. I mean, I not that I did a lot of the things that he did, but just the whole mentality. I mean,
yes, I didn't either.
They come in like, yeah, I'm going to tell you what you're going to do and what you're not going to do, yes. And you're going to get used to that. Yep. And he has this group of dogs too, and they, not that I put down what a group of dogs can do to help another dog, but that's not what he's doing on TV. They don't show that part for the most part, or the weeks they spend at the facility doing the actual rehabilitation. They show, him coming in and him doing his thing, and it's a disservice to what really gets done with those dogs, the good things. And it's very sensational, and they show the aggression, and they show him showing that dog who's boss, and he's doing a lot better. I mean, I've seen some of the newer stuff he's done, and, he's at least incorporating a lot of the stuff and showing that there's other ways of dealing with it. But, he's the big, and jabbing the dog guy. I mean, that's his conditioned punisher. It gets their attention and they respond. So, there's definitely better ways of doing it. And, the fact that we can learn from him and still, take away the good from the bad and grow from it is is what I like about ADB. You know, we tend to look at everything and take it all for what it's worth and not try to, you know, beat around the bush.
That's right.
I guess, you know, there's a lot of things we can talk about. I mean, ADB, it's not something you can just break down for someone in 10 minutes.
No.
There's a lot of the neuroscience. I mean, I have a background in that, so that was really interesting to me, just putting all the pieces together, and also just what we've learned in the last 20 years. I mean, I graduated literally 21 years ago.
Have you ever had any aha moments because of ADB?
Oh, all the time.
And that's what I
You know,
love. We
whether
have them too still, you know?
whether it's something you found and shared with us, like a quote or a video, or just, you know, let's look at this video and what's going on here. And then also taking that with what I've already done, dog training, you know, obedience, and with rehabilitating rescue dogs and the relaxation stuff I do. I mean, I do a lot of the hands-on stuff, and that a lot of trainers don't do, or if they do, it's not an integral part of it. You know, it's like, well, help your dog relax. It's like, no, there's an actual way you can teach a dog to relax. And I don't know how much that you do. I mean, I'm interested to see your techniques when it comes down to actually handling a dog versus just, you know, talking about it. So, you know, that's the where the rubber meets the road. And, you know, where Scott's a big part too, because he's the, you know,
oh my God.
he's on the road doing it, literally.
Yeah, and he is just so brilliant. I mean, you know, I'm getting better, okay, but the stuff that he sees, you know, and I hear it from other trainers that he's working with all the time. They, you know, because I like going back, and then he doesn't even know that I do that, but he will know after he hears this. But after he watches this video, but you know, I like going back, and then I go like, okay, so like, what did you think of Scott? You know, what do you think of his skills? And I hear it so often that people tell me, I don't know how he does this, but he sees things. And they say, you know, I've been working with dogs for so many years, but he sees things, and I don't know how he sees what he sees, but he sees it, and then he addresses it, and he just works his little magic, and the dog changes right before your eyes, you know, and it's just the most amazing thing. And I want to bring up too that I really appreciate that you will host us in Webster. I'm so looking forward to our workshop, and I'm looking forward to meeting you, but I'm always looking forward to teaching this. And so this workshop is going to be awesome. And
yeah, I'm looking forward to it. You know, the whole idea of, you know, learning in an intensive fashion where you do everything in a very short time versus, you know, trying to do it. I mean, we've been doing Zoom calls, we've been talking about stuff, but still I'm going to take way more in 3 days than I have in the last, you know, 6 months. And then the workshop, you know, the last day where it's the hands-on and working with dogs and actually seeing it all come together. I mean, it's one thing to learn about it and talk about it. It's another to see it in action.
And then you still have the chance to work with Scott afterwards for almost.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. You know, it's going to be, you know, just that next level. It's, you know, it's taking the time to spend and dive deep. I mean, that's the best way to look at it. There's different levels. Like you can learn about something, you can do something, and you can make it just your whole life. So, you know, that's something we all decided to do, you know, years ago, and it's personal growth as well as, you know, this is what we bring to the world, and helping others learn. You know, I even when I meet a new trainer, you know, a lot of trainers, they're kind of stuck in the same rut. I've been doing this, I've been learning and just putting it together and taking it to the next level. And, you know, there's a lot of trainers that will buy into, you know, gimmicky stuff, like a lot of e-collar trainers. Like it's kind of the wave of the future, but it's not, because they're trying to outlaw it here and there. Highly debatable. It's, you know, I've seen the videos. There's a lot of shocking footage, and there's a lot of dogs that you would never even know were wearing it, and that are very happy dogs. And begin the debate. That is, you know, where we're at with training. It's I don't use an e-collar. I don't use a lot of training. I barely use a leash if possible.
Yes.
Like most dogs that I train, it's the leash is, you know, it's there just because it's required by law or to keep them from running off if you really need it. But
Yes.
it becomes a huge source of conflict and frustration. And like I pain for dogs. Like I was in Lake George today down in New York. It's very scenic. It's apparently very dog friendly because I saw more dogs walking around a little downtown area than I have ever. Like I must have seen at least 50 dogs walking around today. Oh, wow. And 80% of them were tight leash, trying to pull over to any other dogs. And I'm like, I should just open a shop right here. But you know, it was reality. Like a lot of dogs are thoroughly restrained to the point of, you know, they're hurting themselves. And that's where, you know, the fancy tools come in, and it makes, you know, well, we'll get this out of the way ahead of time. If you try to pull, it's not going to be fun for you. So just don't try to pull. So getting, you know, that actual connection and being able to walk with your dog and have a high degree of control over them. Not even control. I mean, control is it's like commands versus cues, you know. The dog always has a free choice. Unless there's compelling reason not to, which is your shot collar or some sort of, you know, pain or punishment. And, you know, that's what a lot of trainers deal with, because they're like, well, I can fix that and your dog will never jump on the counter again. Or will they? You know, even some of those are very temporary fixes. It stops the behavior for a little bit, but you know, if the dog's hungry enough and has the ability, they're going to find food.
Absolutely. It's a
so
need. It's a need.
Yep. So, you know, being realistic with your dog and what they need and what they want, and, you know, how to, you know, keep everyone happy, because a lot of dogs, they're miserable and they are just trying to get any shred of anything that provides that reinforcement, that dopamine that they're always looking for. And a lot of that's misbehaving. I'm like, your dog is getting a lot of enjoyment or reinforcement out of driving you nuts and just doing whatever they think might work.
Exactly.
And, you know, I could go on. This could be a whole nother episode about this. I mean, that's what we do for a lot of training is just helping break it down for the owners and making life easier on both sides. I'm like, this doesn't need to be this difficult for either of you. Yeah. But here's how, you know, that's the big thing. Yeah. So, all right. So, I mean, we've covered quite a bit here. I really like talking with you, and I hope we can talk a little bit more before we get together in next month. Yep. And we'll obviously put the information for ADB and the conference and everything.
Okay.
And